Okay. I have my PowerPoint, so I'm going to share my screen. There we go. Okay. So we're just going to be going through the certification process for the Information Science School Library program. I always like to start out with the caveat that this is, so like if anybody's watching this recording at a later date, hold on, I want to make sure I'm letting everybody in. There we go. Yeah, so I want to make sure if anybody's watching this at a later date, not like next week, but like in a couple of months, things can always change at NICED. And so always check in with the PI Center if you're concerned that anything might have changed. Um, but right, so I'm gonna do a brief overview of certification, something that you guys probably already know, but I always think it's helpful to reiterate. So you must apply for a New York State certificate upon completion, although you can start the application prior to the completion of a program in order to be applied at a New York State public school. Certificates show that you have met degree, coursework, assessment, and experiential requirements for your profession, in this case, being certified in library science. Some of you may already have your initial certification, so this is definitely a review, but just to go over certification as a whole, you first earn your initial certification. That's the entry-level certification for educators. You receive this when you complete an approved program like ours, when you receive an institutional recommendation, which I'll talk about in a little bit, when you've passed all of the appropriate exams, when you complete the required workshops, and you have fingerprint clearance. And then the final type of certification in New York State is called professional certification. You receive this when obviously you have your initial, but also when you've received an institutional recommendation for professional, when you've completed mentored experience and your 3 years of paid full-time teaching experience, and then also when you've passed all appropriate exams. And so I include that just for students who may already be certified, just to remind them that they do have to take the CST for library science to add this new certificate. I always like to make students aware of this resource on the OTI website, just because I think it can be really helpful to sort of like visibly show what's necessary to become certified. And so I always just pull it up, and this is what the website looks like. You guys are all certified under the area of classroom teacher and library science. Grades pre-K to 12, library media specialist, and let's just click initial certification. And so this just shows you all the different ways that you can become certified in this area. The one that you guys are looking at is this pathway, the approved teacher preparation program pathway, because you are completing an approved program. So everything you need is listed right here. So completion of a program. So once you complete your program, you will have that checked. The institutional recommendation, which I'll talk about, the EAS exam, the CST for library media specialist, the DASA workshop, although you need also the SAVE, the school violence prevention, and the child abuse identification workshops, and then fingerprint clearance. So everything you need is right here. So I just like to point that out just so that if anybody has any questions or if they are unsure. So first and foremost, I always like to remind students that if they have not done so already, to apply for graduation. A couple of years ago, we had a couple of students from library science who forgot to apply for graduation. And then all that does is sort of just slows down the certification process, because we cannot submit the required recommendation until you have graduated from your program. So just always like to include that reminder. The next step when you're applying for certification is to log into your Teach account on the Office of Teaching Initiatives website. You will update your education info. So this is the self-reported education section with the following information. And I guess I didn't update this from last year, but it should be, I believe, 5/14/23. You enter the date that you started your program. That will be different for everyone. Again, enter the date of completion, and then the number of credits for this program is 36. A lot of the steps when you're applying for certification are a lot of just like, make sure you check this box, fill in this field, and then go on to the next page. If you're having trouble progressing to the next page, it's probably because you missed a checkbox or something like that. When you actually go to apply for the certificate, just like when I was searching for the certificate on the website that I just showed you, your area of interest is going to be classroom teacher. Library science is your subject area. You only have one option for grade level. It's all grades. The actual title of your certificate is library media specialist, and then you would apply for initial. If you have fewer than 3 years of teaching experience, you would apply for professional if you have 3+ years of acceptable full-time paid teaching experience. For any of you who may have had an internship certificate through your program, just know that your experience under the internship certificate counts as valid experience that can count toward your professional certificate. And then you will apply for your professional certificate in this exact same way when you have your 3 years, if you don't have that already. Again, a lot of this, I don't feel the need to read this page to you, but it's a lot of just like checking the right boxes, clicking next, and then eventually you will scroll all the way to the bottom, click next, and then pay for your certificate. I'm going to mention to you guys in a couple of slides not to pay for your application until your recommendation has been submitted. This is a new thing in the teach applications, and I'll go over why, but just while I'm saying this, to pay for your application, I want to make sure that you don't pay for your application until your recommendation is submitted. This is that recommendation thing that I keep talking about, right? So in order to apply, you need a university recommendation. This is not a recommendation letter in the traditional sense of like me talking about how wonderful you are, which I'm sure you are. I just don't know everybody in our programs very well. This is actually I go into your Teach account myself and I just confirm that you have completed the degree, the approved teacher preparation program that you have listed on your application. So it's just the way for the university to sort of match up that. So just to say, yes, he or she completed this degree. In order for me to do that, you have to submit a request for the recommendation. The reason being is that I use your social security number to access your Teach account. And so you requesting the recommendation gives me permission to do that. You can submit the request for your recommendation at any time. So if you want to do that today, you can certainly go ahead and do that. But I cannot actually enter the recommendation until your degree is officially conferred. Oh, sorry, this is from a different program, so don't even worry about what that says. I must have copied this slide from somewhere else. Basically, degree conferral happens about a week or two after graduation. And so the graduate school has a designated person that goes through each degree application manually and makes sure that that person has met all of the requirements for graduation. So for example, the students in our teacher preparation programs, we have to have obviously passing and completion of all of your coursework, but also they look for the completion of your workshops because that is a graduation requirement. And so like doing that all manually can take a little bit of time. So the recommendation is not actually entered on the day of graduation, but rather when the degree is conferred by the graduate school. I am constantly checking to see when that's done, and I'm in contact with the graduate school. So if for some reason like you're waiting on your certification for a job offer, I totally understand that, and I'm going to get this done as soon as I possibly can. So I will do this as soon as I find out that degrees have been conferred. I also recommend that you request your recommendation, even if you don't plan to apply for certification right now. Reason being, just to speed along the process when you do decide to apply for certification, once I enter the recommendation, it is there forever. It doesn't expire. So like if you don't plan to apply for certification until next year, but I enter it today, it will still be there. So this is just a way to make sure that you have it in there for when you need it. So request it now. That's my recommendation. Now, this is what I was talking about a little bit earlier. So do not submit your application in Teach until you see that a recommendation has been entered. Recently, the Office of Teaching Initiatives updated their software so that a student who has completed an approved teacher preparation program no longer has to, you may not need to enter a program code. So in the previous slides, I have a program code listed that is just in case they ask for it at some point in your application. But the program code used to connect your application to an approved teacher preparation program. Then my recommendation confirms that you completed that approved teacher preparation program. Now they've made it so that the recommendation is the only thing that you need to confirm that. So they may not be asking you for a program code. Instead, they will just use the recommendation. Now, when that becomes a problem is if a student applies for their certificate and pays for it before a recommendation has been entered, the system, Teach, will say, okay, this person doesn't have a recommendation, so we are going to put them on this pathway. So for someone who's already certified, that would be the certificate progression pathway. And for somebody who is not previously certified, that may put you on the individual evaluation pathway, because they will say, we don't have a recommendation for you, so we're going to assume that you are using that other pathway. If that happens and you apply before the recommendation is submitted, you will be on the wrong pathway. Your application very likely will not go through. And then you will have to work with Teach to change the pathway of your application to the approved teacher preparation program pathway. And that will just delay the time to your certification. It doesn't mean you won't ever get it, but it will take longer because that process is handled by people, right? And so they have to respond to each inquiry individually. If you wait for your recommendation, your application will typically go through automatically within a couple of days. So this is like a new thing that I just found out about last week. So just make sure you can continuously check your Teach account for when that recommendation has been entered. And then once you see it, you can completely submit your application. If you already hold initial certification in another area and you are planning to use this master's degree as the master's degree needed for professional, as well as to add the library science certification, you do not use this process to apply for the certificate in your original areas of initial. If there does come a question where they ask you for a program code, you would check the box stating that you do not have a program code, that you did not complete an approved teacher preparation program in this area. Now, they may not ask you for a program code because of the way that Teach has been changed. If they, by not asking you for a program code, it will automatically put that certificate. So let's say you were previously certified in childhood education. It will automatically put that application on the certificate progression pathway, which is the correct pathway. So for the most part, there isn't much that you'll have to do. It's just if there is a question for a program code, don't enter one. For any questions, you can reach out to, I would say to reach out to me rather than the Pi Center general email, just because for certification questions, I would be the person to go to. So I have my personal email up there. It's the aesco@albany.edu. If there's something like technical aspect, something wrong with your application, you would email teachhelp@nised.gov. There's also some helpful websites. This is the FAQ that sort of like walks you through different steps of the application process. Understanding the status of your application. This is another really helpful website. So basically it tells you like where to find the status of your application. This one says not ready for review. What does that mean? What could be wrong with my application? This one says review complete, pending information. Wait, what does that mean? So it will tell you exactly what that means and how to find out how to fix any issues that might come up. And then further, there's the Pi Center website, which is right here. And we have a very helpful cheat sheet. So if you click here that says apply for certification or find a program code, you'll click on cheat sheet program codes, find your program on this list. And then all of these steps are on one nice sheet. Now, like I said, I am still learning a little bit about the changes that have happened in Teach. So I may have to update these sheets to, to include that we don't need program codes anymore. But as of right now, this is what I know best. If it doesn't ask you for a program code, that's okay. As long as you're waiting to submit your application until after the recommendation has been entered. So that is, that's all the information that I have. Does anyone here have any questions?
Victoria,
Victoria had a question in the chat. So Victoria, do you have another certification? And is your teaching experience in that area of certification? So that counts. You only have to have 3 years of teaching experience under a valid certificate. So let's say you had a childhood ed certificate, you have 3 years of teaching at the childhood level. That counts for professional for both your childhood and your library science.
I'm sorry, I'm going to whisper this. How can I verify that? I would need something for my job.
Exactly. So you will need what's called so if you worked at a public school, okay, so you would need something called a superintendent's statement, which is very similar to when I was talking about the recommendation. It's basically someone from your school district. It isn't always a superintendent. Sometimes it's like an HR rep. They will go into your Teach account and verify those years of experience. For anybody who maybe is not in a public school, there are very certain private schools who do not have access to Teach, who have permission to submit a written form, like a physical copy of a form. But if you are not working at one of those previously approved schools who are able to submit the paper form, it has to be through a superintendent statement. And that's another new development in NICED. Okay, yeah, you're already permanently certified, Victoria. So you can skip applying for initial and apply straight for professional in library science. And because you are already permanently certified, your experience has already been verified. So you do not have to worry about that again. Does anybody else have questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So I was certified birth through 6th grade. I had a dual certification.
Yeah.
My certification expired in 2021. And then I started this master's program. So what would my process look like? Because I'm technically not certified, so I don't know if like
okay,
that second one applies to me.
let me just hold on. Did you have 3 years of experience or no?
Yes, and I think it counted. It was in a different state, but I'm pretty sure because I put it through my Teach account. And I think it did count anyway.
Hold on.
But I think I also technically have 3 years of experience in New York as well.
If you can confirm, and were you working under a valid certificate at the time?
For the first 2 years, yes, I was subbing. My third year, no, because it was at a private school, so they didn't need the certification.
Okay. The 2 years may count. You may have to apply for initial in library science.
Okay.
Unless you can confirm all like a full 3 years, and then you could like working under a valid certificate in the subject area where you were teaching. So those are sort of the stipulations. Like you have to have been working, if you had certification in childhood, you had to have 3 paid full-time years of experience in childhood. If you can confirm
Gotcha.
years of experience and get all 3, I believe you can apply directly for professional. But if you don't have the full 3 confirmed and verified, you would have to apply for initial in library science. And then if you were
Okay.
interested in reinstating your previous areas of certification, I think you would have to reapply for initial in those.
Okay, yeah, because I would want to do both my original area and library sciences.
So yeah.
Um,
And
so
in
I
those
think
cases, they would do an evaluation, and if there was anything that has like changed from the time that you were certified to now, you may have to meet any of those additional or different requirements to reinstate those certifications.
okay, gotcha. So I think I can check my Teach account because I'm pretty sure before I started my master's, I like submitted for those 3 years of verification, and I think they were accepted, even though it was in Virginia. It was still in the area where I was certified, and I was certified. Um, is that something that I guess I could just check on my Teach account?
I think so, but I am going to give you the number to our local and the contact information to our local BOCES certification officer. So there are sometimes like when it comes to, because experience, the 3 years of experience is not part of the degree that you get here, it's not
Mhm.
necessarily, that doesn't actually fall under the university umbrella. So I am only comfortable answering like a certain level of question. And so because
Yeah.
your situation is so individual, I would want to make sure you're getting the correct information. So each BOCES office in New York State, each county has a BOCES office, and each BOCES office has a certification officer who specializes in teacher certification. They are an entity that's more closely tied to NYSED than, let's say, like a college or university. Like we don't really
Mhm.
have a tie with them. And so you can always call them and ask these questions to make sure that, and they may even be able to like go onto your Teach account and say like, yes, you have these years of experience, and because you do, you can apply directly for professional. So let's just,
Okay.
or they may say like, no, you can't. So like I would check with them,
Yeah.
especially before you pay for an application, because they're expensive. So, capital. This is the information for the BOCES certification officers in our area. Of
Thank you.
course. Does anyone else have any other questions? If not, and if there's somebody who's watching this recording later, and you have questions, use the contact information on that last slide and feel free to reach out. I have set up, like individual Zooms with people to chat. Email is also a great way to get in touch and ask your questions. So I'm happy to help with all of that. Like I said, if you're waiting on a recommendation, I'm guessing it will be entered sometime within the next 2 weeks, I would say is a pretty solid estimate. All right. Thank you all for being here. And congratulations, everybody, on completing your program. It's very exciting.
Thank you, Alyssa. We really, really appreciate it.
Of course, of course. All right, bye guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.